Chapter 3 UI Panels and Tabs. Unity's UI is made up of these window panels. These may be stacked together to suit your needs, at which stage they turn into tabs. Should you close any of these, they may be reached through the Window File menu. I will cover all of them in more detail in the next session, but for now allow me to introduce a few of them. It's virtually impossible to introduce all of them because Unity encourages development of third-party tools through its asset store. Arranging tabs becomes especially handful if you're using other plugins. Side note, Unity does not require plugin developers and asset creators to use the asset store. Oftentimes the plugin you'll be using won't even be listed on it. You will download it directly from the developer. Hierarchy. Notice that I see the light in my hierarchy, but the material is not present. This is because the material is not proprietary to the scene. It can be used even in a different project. The light, however, can only be used within one scene. The hierarchy then is the scene. Everything that is within the game will be brought here either at runtime or before compilation. To put it in another way, everything that will be in a scene will be in the hierarchy. It is highly encouraged to set up a multi-level hierarchy when you're organizing your scenes, so the main or root directory is not cluttered with cruft. Inspector. The inspector is the list of properties for each game object. Since all objects within the hierarchy and thus the scene are game objects, all game objects have properties. And since the only thing differentiating game objects from one another are their components, otherwise being completely identical, we will see the properties of their components. If you have a lot of game objects in your scene, it might be hard to constantly pick out the one you need. To lock on a game object through the inspector, press the lock icon. The debug setting will give you even more options to control certain components. Scenes. The Scenes pane gives us a number of view options and visibility toggles. In the Draw Mode drop-down, choosing Textured will show us the materials with their textures visible. Wireframe will show the material with just the wireframe representation. No materials will be shown and no lighting. This might be useful for navigating large scenes in a slower machine. Textured wire is what it sounds like. It combines the textured view with an overlaid wireframe. This might be useful for seeing the overall poly count of your scenes, so it's not too heavy. Rendered paths will show the type of rendering of all game objects with geometry using a color code. Rendering types are outside the scope of what I hope to cover in this course, but at this moment think of them in terms of fidelity levels. Deferred lighting is the highest lighting and shadow quality, then forward rendering, and then vertex lit rendering paths is the lowest level of fidelity. You can specify this globally in the project settings or per camera in the inspector. Light map resolution is a display of the resolution of baked lighting. This might be used in scenes that will be used on a mobile platform that are static. Unity creates another layer of textures on top of your object, baking in the lighting information. In the render mode dropdown, RGB will show you standard object coloring. Alpha will only show you the alpha channel. Overdraw will show your objects as silhouettes. Bitmaps will show you the ideal texture size for your model, ranging from red to blue. What's a bitmap? They are generated versions of your texture with a different size, so the farther away your camera is, the smaller the texture will be. They can take up more memory compared to non-bitmap textures, but they will economize memory consumption overall. Bitmaps are enabled by default and should be used on all textures, except the menu or any non-resizable graphic. The 2D lighting and audio switches will let you turn on 2D mode, which is new to Unity, and toggle lighting and turn off audio. The gizmos menus are pretty handy for toggling the visibility of the program's visualization graphics. You can toggle their viewing type, such as 3D or 2D, or turn them off. This might be useful if you're making a GUI. Navigation gizmo. By twisting this cube, you will see your scene from a multitude of views. You can do this via the icon or through the drop-down menu. This is obviously useful for level creation so you can get a more architectural orthographic view, but it is also important in things like menu creation. Project directory. You may access the directory in two ways, either through a file browser, Finder, Windows Explorer, or through Unity. Bringing in assets into your project is best done within Unity, but there are exceptions. The pane menu in the project panel lets you create new assets in the Create drop-down box, which may also be accessed by right-clicking on an empty part of the panel and choosing Create. A label is a tag, but only for assets, not game objects. To assign one, pick an asset, click on the blue icon with three dots in the Asset Labels section in the inspector and choose one. Now that we've assigned a label, we can use it as a filter and even combine it with other filter types. It's a good way to keep your files organized beyond a folder tree structure.